Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is Freeman Hagbard Celine here from the Leif Erikson. If you're watching this video, it's more than likely that you're either looking for the fictitious character Hagbard Celine from the Illuminatus trilogy by Robert Anton Wilson, or you're following me from my Twitter. Either way, I'm glad to have you guys here. Today, I have before me a video of the dreaded false afro as advertised by Allure magazine. Let's just jump straight into this freaking nonsense.
Allure magazine published a hair tutorial in their August issue titled, Yes, you can have an afro, even if you have straight hair.
Let's stop right there for a second. First, let's note the title, as it will be skewed throughout this sickeningly self-obsessed little exchange. It says nothing at all about race. Her tone is rather inflammatory, though.
Now, the piece not only promises an afro for all, but it uses a white model to showcase the look. Now, of course, Black Twitter didn't take long to call out the situation, nor did the rest of the internet. HuffPost published a piece called Allure Catches Hell for teaching white women how to get an afro. Mike News called it the Rachel Dolezal trend, and Eileen summed it up on Twitter, saying, quote, "What a missed opportunity by Allure magazine to actually talk about afro hair to girls who actually have it."
Why would we teach African American women to make their hair into afros? That already happens. Before we run this, I refer you to this handy chart about eye movement, recall, and bullshittery. I'll let you judge from there.
It's lazy, but it also speaks to why cultural appropriation is such an issue, because all of the things that have just been spelled out as to why it was so wrong could have been fixed if someone had educated themselves, right?
Educate yourself is becoming the culturally correct way to say you need to be re-educated. As in re-education camp. You just can't say that because it's fucking creepy.
The problem with appropriating cultures is that you take on the afro or the cornrow or the box braid without understanding the history behind it. And when you don't understand the history behind something, you don't understand the context in which it's done. And that's what makes it offensive. And I feel like, on that tip, they completely missed the ball, and it was pretty embarrassing for them.
Before we leap forward to this next shrill monster, let's note you should be embarrassed by the fact that you hold a ridiculous double standard based almost entirely on race.
There's a part of it that I think is a willful ignorance to history.
Allure is not and has never claimed to be a history magazine. It is a fashion rag. Manage your expectations.
Right? Because it's one thing if we were having this conversation 10 years ago, but this has been on, Twitter. Like, they might not know who Angela Davis or Nina Simone is, but I know they know who Kylie Jenner is, right? And so this conversation that was been going on for this year very actively, I don't really accept the fact that they don't know, right? And one of the challenges, even to, white editors, if you are a beauty editor in 2015 and you're doing a beauty story and you don't see one woman of color, it is on you just as a professional to say that is wrong, right? And also, to your point about the responses, because I get that a lot, so if Mary J. Blige can wear a Farrah Fawcett blonde feathered hairdo, why can't, white girls wear afros? It really is about this idea of history and context, and white women were never persecuted for their hair.
Sorry I let her drone on for so long, but I wanted you to get a good look at the whole picture of self-aggrandizing crazy that leads up to a statement about persecuting someone over their hair, which isn't a thing. As someone with black siblings, let me tell you, the only people persecuting black people in regards to their hair is other black people. The phrase tender-headed comes to mind. The phrase nappy-headed hoe comes to mind. So stop, I guess.
Right? And also, not just in this appropriation, it is a very African response to use your hair creatively.
Is it?
And artistically. Black people have been weaving things in their hair since the beginning of time, from raffia down to the floor, to beading, to...
Interesting selective research and understanding you have there.
So for Black people to adjust and move their hair, whatever color, whatever extension, whether it's a weave or a wig or a braid or all of it at the same damn time. That is really a way that we culturally express. And some of it is historically to fit in, to be part of the mainstream, and some of it is just because we're fly.
Okay, but just to be clear, as white people, our options and choices are severely limited. However, as black people, go nuts, it's all good. Nothing like a little role reversal to make you feel powerful, is it?
It's not this one reason why black women wear their hair in a certain way, but there is one history in what happened to them.
Well, at least she's gone. Maybe a voice of reason now, or at least someone with a less annoying, grating voice?
That history is frequently that of omission. Derek, I want to bring you into this conversation on the issue of appropriation, because an important part of this, this is a great example, right? It's a very visible example of the race of the model, but also let's talk about how we use language.
Yes, let's talk about language with some race-based sophists. Fantastic.
Which is a little more subtle and complex. As the Twitter user Ignorant Intellect pointed out, the Yes You title suggests that their audience is made up of just white readers with straight hair.
Remember this fallacious claim.
He actually tweeted, yes, white girls, you can have an afro like black girls too, even though you're white. So Derek, let's unpack that a bit, because the
Oh yes, let's. Please.
magazine's talking as though there's no one but white women reading this magazine about getting an afro, which is obviously problematic for a number of reasons, right?
Yes, as I stated before, because clearly black women need to be taught in a beauty magazine how to cultivate an afro. Oh wait, would that be construed as talking down to an ethnic group in today's social climate?
Right.
Well, we've officially lost the voice lotto.
And part of it is that the afro is called the afro for a reason, because it has a root in how African Americans, people who have African ancestry, how our natural hair presents itself.
Oh, you almost had it there. You laughed a bit because it's so absurd. Because it is called the afro, which apparently is not culturally explicit enough for you.
It's not something that we have to modify necessarily to get into that state. So to tell someone else, especially a straight-haired white woman or anyone who was straight-haired, they can somehow magically create an afro was disingenuous.
Then why are you so worried about it?
But in that the Allure magazine targeted this particular tutorial to white women, it was very dismissive of the history, both the culture, the social, and also just the utility, and as Michaela said, and Zebra too, about assimilation. When we have to, wearing an afro is not necessarily a style choice. That's not all it is.
Yeah.
It's about expression of cultural pride. It's also, just because we want to.
There it is again. There. You can't do it because you just want to. Because we don't want you to. We can because we just want to. Full stop.
I don't think offering that to white women in a way, they're doing here is just really disingenuous.
Look up the word disingenuous and then get back to me.
And downright offensive.
And it's this like trying on.
Oh God, she's back.
They want everything but the burden, right?
Totally. No one's like, why don't you actually like step in the shoes of someone who's being racially profiled?
Because when Rachel Dolezal did that, you same screeching harpies swept from the seventh ring to tear her to shreds.
No,
and it's interesting that you said how that language really targeted, that Allure, Condé Nast kind of empire really does. It is positioning itself to be very white and elite. And I think
Nice to meet your straw man. Does he have a name?
doing a story like this is really damaging to their brand in the business. And I think it's one of the reasons why so many younger women, millennials, white, whatever, are looking to the internet for, whether it's Refinery 29 or Couture, like there's or Dubop, they're looking at other places where they see more inclusion or modernism.
But that's not because the internet in general is killing print media. It's because of what you guys have accomplished. It's a point on your scorecard. Congrats. What was that word that Eric used earlier? Disingenuous, was it?
even
Or a big old shout out to HuffPost, because I would like to think of us as quite
Julie, yes.
modern and inclusive when it comes to beauty and style.
And more ego stroking of the over fucking privileged.
Well, I want to bring in one of our commenters. Truth Hurts 2011 says, to me it seems that the Allure was attempting to redefine Afro, and their attempt to do so is disrespectful. Well, Derek, you shouldn't be trying to redefine Afro. It's like, you don't redefine bangs, you don't redefine Farrah Fawcett's style. But let's talk a little bit about, yes.
Yeah, let's just shift the focus away from that ridiculous argument to this emotional shaming portion of the program.
They've been called out. Everyone's talking about it. We've been done wrong. Is this doing anything to move the conversation forward? I mean, this keeps happening.
You're totally right. This stupid narcissistic outrage does keep happening.
This is not something that is actually being minimized by social media, by activism. How do we actually move this conversation forward? So instead of retroactively saying, you shouldn't have done that, people actually are thinking about, hey, wait, maybe I should put some steps forward to not do that in advance.
Well, you know, that's from, I used to be a beauty editor, so I kind of was able to put myself in their shoes, but what they missed was, instead of defending, you know, when Black Twitter talks, I think most people should start to listen.
Big Mother has weighed in. Listen and believe.
Right? Because it's a big opportunity for them to actually reposition themselves, right? And be a little bit more modern and engage. And that's really, we're in the era of engagement.
Era of engagement doesn't mean anything. It's a cute turn of phrase, though. It is quite catchy.
So the fact that they kind of doubled down, defended themselves, did not really listen, then didn't even expand on it, was where they missed out, just as journalists, as beauty, because this is also beauty journalism, right?
No such thing, you nut. No such thing.
They are not in the place to be like the cultural holders of truth. We don't look to Allure for that. But
What? Then what the hell is this all about? If journalism is the seeking of truth in order to expose it, and yet we don't look to Allure for the truth, how do you even speak?
what we do in terms of media is to have an exchange with your audience, and that's where they really missed out.
Oh, wait, I see. We're using you bunch of empty-headed space takers as exemplary journalists, as evidenced by the shift to the we and the use of the amorphic blob word media. Furthermore, it was not a sign of weakness to not acquiesce to your freaking outrage culture.
In their very weak response.
And I think moving the next step in the conversation, we have to, I don't think the burden should only be on Black people and people of color to,
That's right.
let a mainstream white audience know how they can proactively appreciate a culture. I think if you're going to approach a culture and a tradition that is not your own, there needs to be some level of respect and deference for how the people for whom that's their history, how they feel. So when we move from a place of wanting to say, hey, I see that it looks trendy, I'm going to take it, instead say, pause.
Pause indeed. First, this multicultural sensitivity thing is great. You using it as a guilt tool, however, is starting to lose its effect. Secondly, seeing something you like in another culture and then using it in your own culture is what every culture has ever done when it has come into contact with another culture. Including yours.
I want to know what this means, what the significance is, why this matters to people, and then determine whether or not it is actually appropriate for me to appropriate or even participate.
So no whites need apply.
I was at a panel at Condé Nast where their editors were telling, they did this tour with professional women, and they said afros were a no-no and locks were dreadful in the workplace.
Some companies have appearance policies. I guarantee I don't fucking meet Disney's looking like a hippie philosophy major. And the real terrifying truth is, the reason that they had to ban those things was that otherwise they would have to somehow limit them, verbally, which you would also disagree with.
In the workplace, you actually heard this. You actually heard this.
The same company that was telling women a couple of years ago, and it was a big stink. I don't know whether you all remember that, but it was a big deal, right, in the beauty world. And let's be clear, Allure is a beauty magazine. This isn't some random article inside of a lifestyle magazine or a business magazine. Beauty is their business, right?
Well, she's clearly lost her mind here. Otherwise, I think the cognitive dissonance might have killed her. All magazines' business is whatever the magazine is about. Obviously, you loon.
So, and there's big dollars in beauty. So it's not othered in the Allure space. And I think that's one of the reasons why the energy was so intense around it.
The energy is so intense because morons like you are whipping other morons into a frenzy over nothing. By the way, no one should ever say beauty Bible unironically.
They're supposed to be the beauty Bible.
Yeah.
And they really were wrong. So they didn't do their homework. They didn't do their research. There was no scholarship. There was no creativity. How in the world are you going to do a 70s hairstyle story without any black
Well, again, we must remember that it is a trickle-down problem, right? When there are no individuals who can work their way through the internship program to become an editor, to become a photo editor, and recognize, like, hey, there's a check and balance here.
Finally, we come full circle to it being a systemic problem, possibly the only semi-logical and reasonable thing that has been said by this overzealous flock of hens. Yes, I'm including you, Eric, because you deserve it. However, the only way to achieve more people of color in Allure is if more people of color wanted to work at Allure, a dying print magazine, as opposed to doing the smart thing and joining one of the many online fashion networks you yourselves gave examples of. For my final thoughts, this is classic Western wealthy much to do about nothing. An article written with no eye towards race gives basic curling directions to anyone with straight hair, which apparently is white people. Only white people. Apparently only racist white people. My straight-haired Venezuelan friend has some questions for you, though.